But this week, I'm going to talk about what it's like to cover spring training. Spring training, as you guys know, takes place in two different states, Florida and Arizona, and the experiences are quite different in each. In Arizona, everything is centrally located. There used to be two teams in Tucson, which is about 90 miles south of Phoenix, but now all of the teams are in the Phoenix area. And the greatest distance that a baseball writer or actually a team has to travel between two camps, the greatest distance is 47 miles. That's from Surprise, where the Rangers and Royals train, to Mesa, where the Cubs train. 47 miles, that's it. Most of the camps are within a half hour of each other. So, generally speaking, each year, what I'll do is set up in one location and just spread out each day and go to a different camp each day. And as a writer, I have more flexibility than I do in Florida, which I'll get to in a minute. The reason is if something's happening, say with the Angels, and I want to jump over there on a given day, I can do that. Same with the Reds or the Royals or any team in Arizona. Dodgers are here, Giants are here. There are a number of teams here, 15, just like in Florida. Florida is much different. In Florida, you can't simply set up in one place. The camps are spread too far and wide. So generally what I do is I will start in usually Tampa when I go, and I'll go generally 2 weeks in each. Start in Tampa, hit that area. The Phillies are there, the Yankees are there, the Blue Jays, the Orioles and Pirates are not far. The Tigers are in that area as well. Then I'll drift south to Fort Myers. That's where the Red Sox, Twins are. The Rays are not too far away. The Braves as well. And then over to the eastern side of the state, Jupiter is where I will usually be. The Mets are up in Port St. Lucie. The Cardinals and Marlins are in Jupiter. And the Astros and Nationals are really close by in West Palm Beach. It's three different sites, so to speak. And you can't simply wake up one day and say, you know what, I want to go to the Yankees today because you might be on the other side of the state, 3.5 hours away. So that's how Florida works. And I've got one story to tell about Florida and being there and just how crazy it can get when the distances come into play. Now, a few years ago, this was 2019, after Evan Drellick and I wrote the Astros sign stealing story, you might remember that Cody Bellinger over in Arizona, when he was still with the Dodgers, ripped the Astros and said some things about Altuve, how he shouldn't be the MVP. And it was a big controversy. That spring training in general was all about the Astros. The penalties had come out in January, just a month before. There was a lot of talk. So I was in Florida. I was on the east side of the state in Jupiter, Florida. And Carlos Correa, who I know well, I've covered him for a long time, texts me. And he says, I want to respond to Cody Bellinger. I'm like, okay. I was thinking he wanted to do something for print. And I was good with that, of course. I wanted to hear what he had to say. But when Carlos and I continued texting and tried to arrange a time to meet, he made it clear to me that he wanted this to be on television. And at the time, I was working for MLB Network, so that would be possible. There was only one problem. The MLB Network crew had asked me the day before, hey, are we good to go now over to Tampa? And I said, sure, why not? There's nothing really happening here of great consequence. Those guys were having steak at a steakhouse in Tampa, enjoying themselves, when I called and said, Carlos Correa wants to talk tomorrow morning. Can you get back? They had to scramble back. We did the interview. It's maybe the most memorable interview I've done in my entire career. Correa was on fire. And whether you agree or disagree, I'm just talking about the quality of the interview, just the passion that he showed for what he was saying. He, of course, said some things. I challenged him on some things. It went back and forth. But the real story was, at least from my personal perspective, was those poor guys, the audio guy, the producer, and I guess the cameraman. They all had to drag back and leave their dinner, drive all night, and that's how it went down. My other favorite story from spring training, this one is not as spicy as that one, but it involved one year when I was in the Angels clubhouse. Now, spring training is a much more relaxed atmosphere. No one has lost a game yet. The players are cool. They're not worried really much about anything. They're just getting ready for the season. The managers are more relaxed than they would be during the season. It's just, in general, an easier atmosphere to interview, an easier atmosphere overall. So I'm in the Angels clubhouse one morning. It's about 8:30, and I'm talking, I believe it was to Jared Weaver. And we're sitting there talking, and all of a sudden I hear the room go silent. Now, Mike Scioscia, when he was manager of the Angels, had a meeting every morning with his players. Usually he would say something funny, or they'd do a skit, or just something to lighten the mood. Sometimes it was more serious than that, of course. Well, the room had gone quiet because Mike Scioscia was about to start his meeting. So I'm talking to Jared Weaver. I've got my back to where Scioscia is, and I turn around, and there's Mike Scioscia, and he's like, Ken, would it be okay with you if we start our meeting now? And I ran out of there very quickly. Spring training is a blast. I love covering it. Love it a little bit more in Arizona than Florida because it's a little easier. But overall, it's my favorite time of year.